Many know about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a native Black American and a member of the Muscogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, go to nativeblackancestry.com to schedule a consultation.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, smash the like button on the way in. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We have a special guest that's going to be joining the stage in just a moment, but before we bring him up, let me fill you in into what this broadcast is about this evening. You see, tonight we're going to be cutting through the rumors, the speculation, and the half-truths surrounding one of the most important battles taking place in Indian country, the Creek Freedmen controversy. For years, we've heard people claim the freedmen were simply African slaves adopted into the nation, outsiders who married Indians, or people with so-called, or people with no so-called Indian blood, right? I'm sure you guys see it all across social media. People claim that these freedmen folks aren't even Indians. They've got no Indian blood, they say. But what does Indian blood actually mean? Who created that definition? Who decided how it would be measured? And should colonial blood quantum systems have power to override treaties, family histories, political citizenship, and generations of documented participation within the Muscogee Creek Nation? You see, this controversy also forces us to confront a much deeper question. Who is an Indian? Are you an Indian because of your indigenous American ancestry, the language you speak, the traditions you practice, or the tribe, town, clan, and community to which you belong? Or are you only indigenous because a colonial record keeper wrote Indian beside your name? And if that same record keeper or the government employing him later reclassified you as a Negro, colored, mulatto, or freedman, did your indigenous identity, ancestry, and relationship to your nation suddenly disappear? Can a word written in a colonial ledger change who a people are? Or does it merely change how future generations are taught to see them? You see, tonight we're moving beyond talking points and getting into the evidence. We're going to examine the treaties, the court cases, the Dawes Rolls, blood quantum, tribal sovereignty, racial reclassification, and the historical relationship between Creek people and Creek freedmen. Whether you already have a firm opinion or if you're hearing about this controversy for the first time, I challenge you to listen with an open mind. Because the truth may be far more complicated than what many of us have been taught. Now, our guest, Ron Graham, has been a key figure in this struggle, investing years of his time, energy, knowledge, and courage into a battle that carries consequences not only for Creek Freedmen descendants, but for how Native identity, citizenship, and history will be understood for generations to come. His commitment to documenting this history, confronting misinformation, and standing firm in the face of controversy deserves our respect and serious attention. So tonight, the goal is clarity, not rumors, not slogans, not personal attacks, and not avoiding the difficult questions. This is our definitive breakdown of the Creek Freedmen controversy. And with that being said, it's my honor to welcome our guest today, Mr. Ron Graham. How you doing today, Ron?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. For the folks who are not familiar with the work that you've been doing throughout the decades, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Well, my name's Ron Graham. I was born and raised here in Muscogee, Creek Nation capital. I graduated here in high school, and I just started in '83 doing my dad's genealogy, and it led me to what we have right now.
Nice. Well, hey, I know that you've got a presentation prepared for us. I'm going to give you the floor to present any information you'd like to. And if anybody has any questions, there's a Q&A in the chat. Just go ahead and post your questions in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do a little Q&A. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Perfect. Well, you have the floor, Ron. Go ahead, take it away.
All right. thank you all for coming and joining us. And I'm going to just start out. I am the chairman of the Muscogee Creek Freedmen Coalition, based here in Muscogee. First, I want to start with a timeline of laws. This is the federal law that is in the United States Constitution, Article 6, Paragraph 2. And it states that all treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. Okay? For sake of time, I'm going to just go through these. If you like to read through them, you could read through them. But right here, it states that all treaties were the supreme law of the land. And that still is excellent law, right? But it's good law. In 1790, the Creek Nation had a treaty. That's one of the first treaties that they had with the United States right there. In 1825, 1832, in that area, you had that was in the Oklahoma Red Book. That book had been codified by the council people that were here in Oklahoma. This was in one of their books. It spoke about the Treaty of 1832. That was the Trail of Tears, or the Removal Treaty. This is another treaty that the Creek Nation had back. It was with the Confederate States. So they had a treaty in 1861 with the Confederate States. And that's why they had to have another treaty, because as you know, the Confederates did lose the battle. They lost the Civil War. So, and this treaty is how we get the Creek Freedmen and other freedmen of other tribes get their citizenship from this treaty right here. And this treaty is equivalent to the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution. To the left, you have the 1866 Treaty, Article 2. This is what gave the people of African descent their citizenship. And they were only citizens of the Creek Nation. And to the right, as you can see, you have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And that made people of African descent U.S. citizens right there. And when you talk about freedmen, you're talking about two types of freedmen. You had freedmen that were in the 5 tribes, and then you had freedmen that were down south. Okay, now we're still in 1866, 1867. Many of you all never heard of the territory of Lincoln. This territory was back in the time of Reconstruction. And it dealt with what were they going to do? What were they going to name? What bills that was proposed back in that time of the Indian Territory. They wanted to name it, I'll call it the Territory of Lincoln. And in that proposal, this is what it read, Section 2, that the executive power and authority in and over the territory shall be vested in a governor who shall be an American citizen of African descent. There's a reason why that is worded like that. And I'll give you the answer here in a little bit. Section 2 says the same thing. There shall be a secretary of said territory who shall be an American citizen of African descent. Again, this is in the proposal when they proposed the Indian Territory to be called the Territory of Lincoln. As you can see, that the representatives and the legislators would be an American citizen of African descent. Section 9, same thing, shall be vested in a Supreme Court, District Court, Probate Court, and Justice of the Peace. The Justices of the Peace shall be an American citizen of African descent. Section 10, same thing. And I have the whole proposal. I have the whole proposal of this. There shall be appointed an attorney for the territory who shall be an American citizen of African descent. And again, there should be an American citizen who shall be a marshal for territory appointed who shall be American citizen of African descent. That's the actual map that was submitted with that proposal at that time. So what you're looking at and their mindset back then was, okay, you had this one territory, and the Native Americans already had the eastern part because they had already been in negotiations with the United States because of the treaties. So that left that western side open for the western side of Indian Territory, or what they was going to be calling Territory of Lincoln. And that western side was for people of African descent, talking about the ones that were down south. Because remember, the people that was in the Creek Nation, they were included in the treaty and became citizens of the Creek Nation. They were not U.S. citizens or American citizens. That's why that is worded that way. So this whole territory or this state was going to be a colored state. That's how they looked at things back then. This is well documented, you all. Well documented. All this was a treaty from Washington, D.C. And that's in that map, it shows you right in the middle of it that Lincoln. That's exactly where Lincoln was going to be, the territory of Lincoln, right there. Then you came the first Muscogee Creek Nation Constitution. And in their Constitution, it reads that all treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. Okay? And you can find that Constitution there at the Creek Nation. It was codified. The Constitution was codified in 1892. And when they did that, it still got in there. It has in there, the treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. Then came along the Dawes Commission. I'm just doing a timeline of what's going on. The Dawes Commission, that was in 1893, between 1914. One of the acts that was pertaining to the Dawes Commission was this act of April 26, 1906. It was an act that provided a final disposition for everything. If you were on the Freedman roll, you were going to stay on the Freedman roll. Although if you were full blood or by blood, you was listed on there. They placed you on there. You stayed on there. This act is what did it right here. So this is another act. This act of May 27, 1908. And these acts can be brought up from, if you Google it or anything, you can still bring these acts up. And they're still in existence. This act tells you that the role of citizens in a freedman of the 5 tribes approved by Secretary of Interior shall be conclusive evidence of the quantum of Indian blood, which is vital right now to be in these tribes, except the Cherokee. As you know, they just passed that law that did not require blood quantum. The Cherokees and the Seminoles actually, but sometimes you would be denied programs or things of that nature without a blood quantum. Okay, but I'm showing you these things because it'll end up to somewhere where I'm going.
And real quick, if I may, Ron, a quick disclaimer for people who aren't that familiar with this topic. Right now, not only is Ron setting the stage, given a timeline, but a lot of these articles and treaties, he's just reading them verbatim. When it says people of African descent, we acknowledge and recognize that they weren't doing genealogy tests back then. They weren't doing DNA tests back then. They weren't stopping someone and saying, wait, are you an African or are you an Indian? If you're richly melanated, if you're in the South, they're just alleging African descent based on phenotype alone. Just like people are getting reclassified as freedmen. And that act, I think you said, of 1907 made it to where if you were classified as a freedman, you're a freedman now, it's going to stick. Well, in that same way, when they write this language of African descent in these treaties, it sticks, even though that African descent is alleged at best, assumed, right?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Ron. You have the floor.
Again, in Oklahoma Red Book, it talks about in 1912 how they separated people at the schools and things of that nature. The term colored children, as used in this section, shall be construed as to mean children of African descent. The term white children shall include all other children. At this time, because some Native Americans were called colored, or were regarded as colored. And that's what they were talking about, because there were a lot of Europeans that had children by the natives, and they couldn't, keep them as colored or black. That's when they were turned white right here in this law right here. And that is how I look at it. That's my definition of it. Again, you have the same thing here. Wherever in this condition and laws of said state, the word or words colored or colored race, Negro or Negro race are used, that shall same construe to mean to apply to all persons of African descent. The term white shall talk about all the other folk right there. So you see exactly what's going on. Yes.
Real quick, Ron, if I understand this correctly, this is the Oklahoma Red Book, Volume 1. This is the definition of races within Indian Territory, or at this point, has Indian Territory already transformed into Oklahoma statehood?
Yes, because this is 1912. See it?
Okay, 1912. Okay,
so 1912.
Indian Territory has already been transitioned into Oklahoma statehood. But even still, we know, even though there's a lot of white settlers, there's still a whole bunch of Indians. But it's interesting to me because this language only lists two racial groups, right? There's white, or there's people who are Negro colored and they're claiming they have African descent. Why is there no category for Indian? Were the Indians either lumped into the white box or the black box?
They were lumped in the white. In my research, they were lumped in the white, because there were a lot of white people that had married and had kids by these natives. You couldn't keep those natives classified as Negro, not at that time. So they were classified as white at this time right here.
So this is basically purely phenotypical lookership. If you're an indigenous person who's fairer skin, then they'll go ahead and call you white. But if you're an indigenous person of darker skin, well, you're now a colored Negro of African descent.
Quote unquote, yes.
Wow.
And that's typically how it was, let's say 90% of the time, okay? Because in my research, I seen a person's status, and they would give them instead of classifying them as a Negro, they may classify them as full-blood native, or things of that nature. In my research, I believe that it's more of a status that a person had in the tribe. Because when you look at it, the Creek Nation and all these tribes where we're at, it's still a reservation. It is a reservation. So that's how I look at things when it comes to that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the clarification.
All right. In the Oklahoma, we're still in the Oklahoma Red Book. This is so important because this is how important the Dun Roll was back in that time, because the Dun Roll it came out in 1869. But still yet, they were still using that terminology in 1912 about the Dun Roll. And because that Dun Roll was vital, it was made for the people of African descent. Well, they did a census of everybody in the Creek Nation, but more so for the Creek Freedmen, or people of African descent in the Creek Nation, because you had thousands of people coming into the reservation as a whole with African descent, and they had to distinguish, okay, who is a citizen and who is not a citizen. And if you were a citizen, you was placed on that J.W. Dun Roll. So that was vital at that time. Along came the 1936 Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act. As you can see what that act did at that time, it just made changes that the tribes could take more control of their nation. Okay, this is a document I came across right after the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act. Okay, 1938. I call it eliminating the freedmen, because that's exactly what the tribes tried to do. It's stated right there. Your consideration is request on this question as to the status of the freedmen of the 5 tribes, and particularly the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. It is our understanding that a group of Indians are favorable to organizing under the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, amending the Indian Reorganization Act, but want to find some way to eliminate the freedmen. This is the only place I've found in writing where, as you can see, is documented like this. It's actually documented. They wanted to find some way to eliminate the freedmen. But in 1891, he had answered that. Nathan Margot, he answered it. And he stated the freedmen, it's at the bottom, were adopted as members into the Creek Nation. I'm specifically talking about the Creek Nation because I am Creek. Okay, I've been Creek all my life, so and I'm just dealing with that right now. Okay, but as you can see, it's saying back then that because of the treaty, we are members of the tribe. Now, this is what so much talk about. What folks is talking about, the Muscogee Creek Nation 1979 Constitution. I've heard people say that's when they voted the freedmen out. That's when they did this. The by blood came in then. No, it did not. I have a documented proof of what went on. 1979 voter sample ballot. This is it right here. It was just 3 questions. Well, actually, it was 6, but it was 3. You had 2 questions. You could either vote for a second chief to be a successor over the principal chief. You could either vote the House of Kings, House of Warriors, or you could have a district, a geographical district. And as you know, even today, we have a geographical district. It's how we vote. This happened in 1979. This was voted by Everybody, all the citizens voted on in 1979 in August. Okay, it was also written in Muscogee Creek language. As you can see, it was also written in Muscogee. This is what it looks like side by side. And then August 17th, 79, the BIA, they approved it. But they approved it, as you can see, it's highlighted because it's not contrary to federal law. So nothing in this vote was illegal. Anything. It was not illegal. Okay? Now, then come along, they're voting now for a national council. As you can see, it was in December the 1st, 1979. That's after they had that first vote, then they had the vote for a national council. Folks, this is the first national council. Before that, the House of People and the House of Kings, House of Warriors was determining citizenship. Even the BIA stepped in at times and determined citizenship. But at this time, this is how they did it. December the 1st, 1979, the citizen vote for who were on the National Council. Okay? And then there was a runoff. About a month later, there was a runoff. And this is the runoff result right here. All these documents can be obtained from the citizenship board. The election board or the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Muscogee. As you can see, I'm using their documents. I'm using what was given to me. I've just put this all together for people can stop assuming that okay, we voted them out. We did this. No, you didn't vote the Freedmen out. But I will show you what happened.
Well, hold on real quick. Hold on. Before you show us what happened, let's just make sure that people understand this, because a lot of people aren't as litigious as you and I. A lot of people, they're hearing this for the first time. It may seem like a lot of legalese, but they hear the rumors. They see the folks on social media talking about, you Creeks were never part of the tribe. We kicked you out of the tribe. You got no Indian blood. We voted you out. You're showing through records that at one point in time, citizenship was determined by the House of Warrior, the House of Kings as well, right? And that the vote that did occur from all citizens of the nation to vote, there was never a vote on the matter of freedmen citizenship. The vote was about, are we going to have a national council? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do districts? There's not one ballot there that says, hey, vote yes or no. Do you think freedmen should be part of the tribe? But
totally correct. Totally correct.
But it seems like what that vote did do, or what happened after that, is that somehow a change occurs. And instead of the House of Warriors, the House of Kings being in charge of citizenship or having a say in it, which we know there was a lot of black figures within those houses, our grandfather being one of them. But they somehow shift it to saying, you know what, we're going to create this national council. And this national council is going to decide on matters like citizenship. And without giving away any spoilers, it seems like the first act that the National Council really did of significance was the expelling of the freedmen.
Let's see. I do agree with you, though. I do agree with you. But if you could see on question 3, if you could see at the bottom, it says representation. This is what happened. This is why the House of Kings or the House of Warriors did not exist anymore, because they voted in a geographical district for somebody to represent. This is it right here. This is all it did right here. And And again, it was approved by the BIA. That's because none of that was contrary to federal law. Now, I'm going to show you what it was, though. Okay, but that's when they voted for the National Council. You had a runoff January the 5th, 1980. Once they had everybody in place, the National Council, then they started negotiating the Constitution. What was in, what was out, what was doing, well, how was they going to do things, okay? And this is where they inserted the by blood. They being the National Council did this. The first thing they did was an ordinance of the Muscogee Creek Nation establishing. They did this November the 10th. The vote was November the 10th. But they did it from the time that vote was in January to now. November the 10th was the vote. But this is where they first officially established the citizenship role. Right here. Right here. Okay, this is what was in the Constitution. The 1979 Constitution of the Muscogee Nation, Muscogee Creek Nation shall be supreme. Let's think about it. What is it supreme over? Okay, think about that. What does that mean? And I'm going to tell you what it means here later on. Again, United States, each Muscogee Creek Indian by blood. That's when they just inserted it. They just inserted it in the Constitution. That's all they did. It was not voted on by the citizen. You'll see who it was voted on when I get through. Section 2, persons eligible for citizenship in the Muscogee Creek Nation shall consist of Muscogee Creek Nation Indian by blood. Again, just insert it in there. All persons eligible for citizenship. The person is a Muscogee Creek Nation citizenship whose name appears on the final rolls as provided by the Act of April 26, 1906, 34 Statute 37. That statute is so important right to this day because that statute included the freedmen. It included all the freedmen. It included everybody that was on that Dawes Commission. That was that statute I was fully talking about. Now, the Constitution, I've seen them propose and what's going on now. They don't need to insert the word freedman because this does it. That statute has already said it. It talks about everybody. Okay? The so-called by blood and the freedmen. And I say so-called because when you clearly look at a freedman census card, at the very top it says freedman. When you look at a card, census card that has a blood quantum on there, it doesn't say by blood. No, it just simply have a blood quantum. That's it. All right. But that act right here that I read a moment ago, they are still utilizing this act, which is vital. It's very important. Again, except those persons who are Muscogee Creek Indian by blood. Folks, at the time, everybody in the Creek Nation was a Muscogee Creek Indian. Okay? We're a Muscogee Creek Indian, just like Americans made African Americans Americans. They were Americans. Okay? The same thing. It took documentation. That's all it did. It took documentation. I am Muscogee Creek Indian. This is when they came up with the full citizenship. If you had to be a quarter or more. Again, citizen board shall establish procedures which ensures that each Muscogee Creek Indian by blood. Let me say again, we were all Muscogee Creek Indians until in 1980 when they inserted the word by blood. Information on the roll, again, the degree of blood.
And also, Ron, I think this is another important distinction since we got more and more people who are just now joining us and catching up on the stream. What Ron's speaking about right now isn't even necessarily genealogy or heritage or ancestry. We're going to discuss that, of course. That still plays a part. But we're talking about citizenship. We can debate later whether or not a freedman really came from Africa once upon a time or really was indigenous American and reclassified as freedman. That's neither here nor there. You can believe whatever you want. But the law of the land states that whether you're classified as a freedman or not, you're a citizen. And a citizen is entitled to the benefits of that nation, to recognition in that nation, just like an American citizen, whether their ancestors migrated from somewhere else or not. So I know some people are going to be a little bit triggered because a lot of people ride real hard for advocating for the fact that there's a lot of Black indigenous people who are wrongfully racial reclassified. We're going to touch on that, but we're just speaking clearly from a legal citizenship standpoint. It does not matter what your heritage is. There may have been some Africans that intermingle with some Creek Indians, but guess what? If your mama was African and your daddy was Creek, you're still entitled to citizenship. That does not erase your indigenous ancestry.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Okay, now they made it specific right here. Who is eligible? The eligibility for citizenship. Person eligible for citizenship in the Muscogee Creek Nation shall consist of Muscogee Creek Indians by blood, okay, whose name appear on the final roll as provided by the Act of April 26, 1906, 34 Statute 137. Folks, if you take that by blood out, because freedmen are Muscogee Creek Indians, just like freedmen down south are American citizens, still to this day, are American citizens, period. Who is ineligible? The following persons shall not be eligible for citizenship. Persons who are not Muscogee Creek Indian by blood. Nowhere in this Constitution where it says you freedmen are not eligible. It can't say that. It won't say that. And it shouldn't say that. It shouldn't say this either. This is a person who is not ineligible. Person who are not Muscogee Creek Indian by blood. This is when they first established a citizenship ordinance right here. This is what it looks like side by side. Now, how did this change? You're looking at it right here. I, the undersigned, certify that the foregoing is a true exacting from the minutes of the Muscogee Creek National Council, comprised of 8 members, with 5 members at this meeting on the 10th day of November 1980, and that the above ordinance is in conformance with the provisions adopted by a vote of 4 people, 4 for and 0 against, 0 abstain. It was 5 members there. It was 4 who actually voted. That 5th member was the speaker, and he was the one that signed it. Folks, that is what got the by-blood phrase in the Constitution. That's all it was. That is all it was. A vote from 4 people. And these are the 8 people at the time, the National Council, that were on the National Council. Okay? The principal chief was Carl Clark. Second chief was Solomon McCombs. And you can see the other National Council members. It was certified by Childers, Kenneth Childers, and then it was approved 3 days later by the principal chief, Carl Clark's. Folks, that's all that happened. That's it. That is how the by-blood got infiltrated in the Muscogee Creek Nation Constitution.
So an important cliff note that a lot of us, when we're battling it out on social media, can use is that it's a total false narrative that the Creek people rejected the Freedmen, voted the Freedmen out. In actuality, that vote came from 4 people on the National Council.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
We went from Creek Freedmen, our African slaves that somehow got adopted and the tribe didn't want them anyways and kicked them out, to know in actuality, through a whole lot of legalese, 4 National Council members changed added a term by blood requirement to the citizenship. And by default, those 4 people have now resulted in an untold amount of tens of thousands of people being denied their tribal citizenship.
I totally agree. That, as you can see, the documents are right there, and you can clearly obtain these from the election board. If not, someone up there at the Muscogee Creek Nation, you can obtain these documents right there. And what happened? Let me show you something. To the left is an approval. They approved that 1979 vote, the BIA. It was approved because nothing in that vote was contrary to federal law. To the right, the Creek Nation Judicial Court is stating that the by blood phrase is contrary to federal law. Okay? And those documents are right there at your court. All the Creek Nation has to do is repeal all words, all the language that says by blood. You do not have to keep by blood or put the Freedman in there, because again, that act, the act of 1906, the act of April 24th, 1906, 34 Statute 137, it covers it all. It covers the whole thing. Okay? This is the statement I would like to talk about. Look what the National Council did again. The National Council finds that Constitution supreme. Well, what is it supreme over? What is supreme over? The National Council, the 1979 Constitution of the Muscogee Creek Nation Constitution shall be supreme over. What is supreme over? Okay, is it supreme over the United States Constitution, Article 6? Because there it says the supreme law of all treaties are the supreme law of the land. Okay, and the 1867 Muscogee Creek Nation Constitution, it states, Article 17, it states all treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. It was codified. That Muscogee Creek Nation Constitution was codified in 1892. There it says the treaties shall be the supreme law of the land. But then all of a sudden, the 1979 Constitution is supreme law. Okay, so how could that be? There is no way that should be like that. And that is why they said it was in the Supreme Court of the Muscogee Creek Nation stated that it was contrary to federal law or contrary to law. They even went a step further, saying that it was unlawful in void ab initio, meaning it was unlawful from the beginning. What was the beginning? It wasn't a 1979 vote. The beginning of the unlawful and it was the 1980, the 1980 National Council vote by 4 people. They were the ones that inserted the phrase by blood. And that right there, folks, is what the Supreme Court said. It has to be repealed. It has to be removed. Period. Just go by that act of April 26, 1906, 34 Statute 137. That covers everybody. Period. It covers everybody. Now I have some, Mr. Lane, is there any questions or concerns or anything?
Yeah, you know what? Before we get to the questions, I'm curious. Can you give us an update into where the case stands present day? A lot of people are confused on social media. A lot of people have seen where, the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Freedmen. So a lot of people think that since last year, Freedmen have got citizenships and they've been welcomed into the tribe with open arms. Can you give us a status update on where that case stands? How many Freedmen have received citizenship since that Supreme Court ruling?
Well, let me take that question first. 0. None. Because of the chief, David Hill, he has an executive order that's putting a halt to any freedman obtaining their citizenship card, although we are eligible to get them, because me personally have submitted my application with all my necessary documents. No one has gotten a card. Right now, it has been taken to federal court in Oklahoma City. We're suing Chief Hill along with the Citizenship Board because we do not have our citizenship cards. And that's where it stands right now. Nobody has gotten there. None of the freedmen has gotten their citizenship card, right? But it said federal, and it was just taken to federal July the 23rd, 1 year later after the ruling that was handed last year. It's been a year since then. No freedman has gotten our citizenship card, but where it stands right now, it is in federal court.
I see. And I like to be a fly on the wall as well. Being that I do have tribal citizenship, I like to make sure I'm privy to all these little Zoom calls and all these little meetups that the Creek Nation citizens have been having about what's been going on with the Creek Freedmen ruling. And I can tell you, they're feeding a total false narrative to Creek citizens.
Yes,
the consensus that they're giving us, if I'm just a regular Creek citizen and I don't know about racial reclass, I don't know about none of this, they're telling us, well, look, the court said that the freedmen can get their citizenship, and we're not denying that. They're going to get their citizenship. It's so difficult for us to process all these new applicants, and we're going to have to restructure programs and how we give out certain benefits. So you know what? We need to have a meeting about how we're going to try to process the applications. But then when you inquire as to, so has that meeting been had? It's been a year. Is there a meeting on the books? Nope. Oh, do you guys plan on having that meeting soon or anything? Nope. At this time, we have no indication of an upcoming meeting. National Council's not meeting. But what they're trying to tell us, guys, don't worry. The freedmen are going to get their citizenship. It's just we've got so much bureaucratic administrative paperwork that we got to sort out first. Come on.
It took me 10 days. 10 days. I went through that whole Constitution, went through the Citizenship Board policy and procedures. All I did was comply with what the Muscogee Creek Nation's Supreme Court said. Simply repeal the by blood. That's all you have to do. You do not have to add the word freedman or add this in there. Just simply repeal by blood or Indian by blood, whatever it takes. It took me 10 days to do all of that. 10 days, that's it. So I don't know what else they are doing. I don't know if the Supreme Court stated, okay, you do this. You don't have to go through the National Council or any other administration. Just comply with the Supreme Court, and then if you got to do that, do this and that. But it did not take me. It took 10 days to totally complete it, and I have all their. Unless they got something brand new, I have all their. I have the Constitution. I have the Citizenship Board, the Citizenship Office, the policies and procedures, the laws. I have all that stuff right there. What the National Council, I have those things. Just simply go through there and repeal by blood. You don't have to add nothing else in there, period. Take a look. And I'm reaching out. If they listen to this, I'm reaching out. Do that. I don't mind helping out either. The best way I can. I consider myself a genealogist first and foremost. I thank God for it. But I don't mind helping out at all. I don't mind working together. But I just want people to know the truth about what's going on, what went on back in 79 and 80. I want people to know what really went on about that by blood.
Absolutely. And I got to ask you, of course, we're now diving into the realm of personal opinion, not, document-based genealogy or anything. But what is your personal opinion as to why they are delaying this? I mean, I personally can't see any way that they can legally get out of giving them citizenship if the Treaty of 1866 already stipulates it. The Own Tribe Supreme Court has agreed with the Creek Freedmen claim. I mean, do you think that they're just denying the inevitable, or there's some other trump card that they're looking to play, or?
No, they're just delaying the inevitable, like you stated. I don't know. I can't tell you because I posed that question to them, and they all said the same thing, that you're not by blood. Well, the Supreme Court of the Creek Nation said the by blood phrase is unlawful.
It's not on the treaty.
No,
the treaty supersedes whatever amendment a national council wants to do later, right? I mean, come on, it's a treaty.
Absolutely. So I don't know. I don't know if it's pure racism. I don't know if it's greed. I don't know. And that's the only answer I've gotten from everybody I asked that had their card. Well, you're not. The freedmen are not by blood. No, we're citizens. Just like I'm an American citizen. America never came back and said, "Are you an American by blood?" What does that mean? Okay, what is it? Yeah. In my research, if you only knew what that blood quantum meant, okay. But I'm not going to show that at this time. But I could show all kind of laws and other things of that nature. Okay. I'm if I have time, I'm gonna start with the genealogy part
Oh
of
yeah,
my
you've
ancestry.
got plenty of time. You've got plenty of time, and also, if you need a moment to pull up any other documents, go for it. What I want to quickly share some people, excuse me, what I want to briefly share with some people is something that I share with people that I do genealogy consultations with, and this is just a really quick breakdown into the fact that when we talk about this whole Freedman thing. I mean, it's so much more complicated than the average person realizes. I mean, they can sit through that whole lecture you just gave and still not really grasp how complicated this truly is. If I actually bring up a digital whiteboard, for example, I not start off towards the end of the genealogy consultations. Towards the end, I start off giving a little lesson on how the Dawes Roll was created, how Indian Territory became Oklahoma statehood, et cetera, et cetera. But the first thing that I do is I break down this term freedman, because a lot of people wrongfully assume that a freedman is exclusively an African slave that later got emancipated somehow. In actuality, there's two different types of freedmen. You're going to have freedmen in U.S. territory. You're going to have freedmen in tribal territory. Now, if I start by covering some of the similarities, we do have situations in U.S. territory where you have someone who is enslaved. They get their freedom, and now they're called a freedman. Pretty self-explanatory, nothing necessarily wrong with that. And sometimes the same thing took place in tribal territory. You did have some folks that were enslaved by different tribal groups. And when they get their freedom, well, now they're called freedmen. But what most people don't realize is that in U.S. territory, you also had folks who were never enslaved. And they still got reclassified as freedmen anyways.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Look up the census records and the huge demographics of people listed as free persons of color, free man, free colored, free mulattoes. There was many people, myself included, when we do our genealogy and we're looking for plantation slaves. Wait a minute, so-and-so was free. They were never enslaved. And a perfect example that I can give you is last year, I had this older lady and she hired me to trace her family's genealogy. And when I presented the results to her, I showed her where her great-great-great-grandfather had a labor contract negotiated through the Freedmen's Bureau in Louisiana after the Civil War during Reconstruction era. So this lady says to me, Mike, my grandfather was a freedman, so he was a slave. Well, I then showed her the 1830 Louisiana census where her grandfather's listed as a free person of color. Not only that, he owns plantations. Not only that, he owns slaves. But wait, there's more. I found the actual purchase agreement where he was buying slaves to grant them their freedom. It was called manumission at the time. He would actually write in the bill of sale, when this transaction is concluded, so-and-so is free and has the full protection of my family. But you see how she would automatically assume that her grandfather was a slave himself because of this freedman label that gets slapped on him later on in life. And in tribal territory, we got the same thing going on. We've got free Black indigenous people who are never, ever enslaved. But when it comes time to sign up on the Dawes Roll, they get racially reclassified as freedmen. I mean, I do dozens of genealogy consultations every month. And I have a little exercise that I do with folks. I got a little game I play with them. I say, okay, we know that Indian removal, the Trail of Tears, was the 1830s. And I tell them, guess, just throw out a number. Just give me a guess off the top of your head. How long after Indian removal do you think it took until they came up with the Dawes Roll? People guess all the time. Well, Mike, the same year? 2 years later? 5 years later? 15 years later? People are so shocked when I tell them, no, the Dawes Roll is not created all the way until 1898.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
1898. But I don't stop there. I then give them some context. After the shock and awe subsides, I tell them, hey, listen, you've got to understand what was going on during this period of time that led to the Dawes Roll being created all of a sudden 60 plus years after Indian removal. And I give them a little adage. I speak figuratively with them, but I break it down like this. even though we were being displaced from the Southeast, we technically still had treaties with the US government. And the treaty went like this: if we agreed to leave the Southeast and go west of the Mississippi, we would get hundreds of thousands of acres of land. It would be Indian territory. They said, don't worry, no white folks will ever set foot on your land. Us white people, we're going to stay east of the Mississippi. You'll stay west of the Mississippi. Have your own government. Be with your tribe. Do your own thing. And that's exactly how it went for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. But what happened was, over time, some white folks snuck into Indian territory. And they reported what they saw back to Uncle Sam in Washington, D.C. And figuratively speaking, they sat down with Uncle Sam one day and said, yo, Uncle Sam, have you lost your damn mind? You don't realize that all this land we just gave these Indians is rich with oil?
There you go.
As soon as the U.S. government realized Indian territory had oil beneath it, you already know how the story goes. Well, what does the United States government do when they find out you're sitting on some oil? But wait, they had a little problem. Optically, it was going to look a little too shady for them to just come to Indian territory and take the land back. It would look way too shisty to come 60 plus years later and steal back the land that you gave the Indians in exchange for the other land that you stole from the Indians. So they had to be a little crafty with it. So this is where they get Henry Dawes, Massachusetts senator. They essentially, for lack of better words, they sent that white boy and his friends out to Indian territory to start picking and choosing who's an Indian and who's not an Indian no more. They would interrogate our ancestors in their own home. I've read the interrogations. They call them interviews. I've read dozens of them. They'll straight up ask you, who's your mother? Who's your father? What tribe are you? Who's your grandparents? Speak the language. Do you have anybody who can vouch for you being Indian? I've read it. They answer it perfectly. They speak in the language. They're Creek, they're Choctaw, they're Seminole. Their community also recognizes them as such. But you know what it'll say on the next page? A big old stamp that says denied or rejected. And then in the notes, it says, this person claims that they're a Creek Indian, but they visibly look Negro. Somebody is applying to be a citizen, and they're being denied and reclassified as a Negro just based off their phenotype. Guys, this is the late 1800s, early 1900s. I don't have to tell you how racist things were back then.
Yeah.
Come on.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I've read those things also. Yes.
And then I go on to break it down further for folks. I tell them straight up, listen, this is where we get some financial incentive to reclassify people as freedmen. Because the way that the Dawes Commission did it is they said, hey, look, we're not going to steal your land. I mean, we don't do that no more. We're the good guys, right? We're not going to steal the land, but we think we gave you a lot of land, a lot of extra land. So listen, we're going to force you to accept individual privatized land allotments, and the rest of the land we're going to open up to European settlement.
That's it.
And then on top of it, here's the kicker. Most people don't understand how this was really kind of the nail in the coffin. This was kind of like the end-all be-all of fully subjugating these indigenous groups, because people don't understand how powerful the indigenous concept of communal land ownership is. American Indians had no concept of privatized land allotments. If me and Ron are part of the same tribe, let's say we're Creek, which we are, right?
Yes.
But just for example's sake, let's say there's 50,000 Creek Indians a part of our tribe. And collectively as a group, we own 150,000 acres of land. Well, if the U.S. government wants to come and take our land back from us, they got 50,000 Creek Indians they got to contend with. So through the power of divide and conquer, they force the Indians to accept individual family land allotments. You get a land allotment, you get a land allotment, you get one, you get one. And over time, KKK gets sent over to this family's land, runs them off. This one gets taken by taxation. This one through eminent domain. A lot of these Indian land allotments end up in the hands of European settlers. But wait, they said all the leftover land we're going to give to settlers to start drilling for oil and whatnot. And here comes the financial incentive to reclassify people as freedmen. Because if you're listed on the Dawes Roll as a by blood Indian, well, by blood Indians are getting 160 acres of land per person. If you're classified as a freedman, some tribes still gave them the 160. Some tribes only gave them 40 acres.
Yeah, that's right.
And remember, every piece of land that's left over, they can sell to European settlers. So everyone they reclassify as a freedman, they just freed up 120 acres of land to go sell to their European buddies. People ask me all the time, hey, Mike, I mean, what's up with that phrase? What is it again? $5 Indian. How were Europeans able to pay $5 to get listed with these tribes? Most people are so naive that to this day, they think it was the Indian tribes coming up with these tribal rolls. They think these rolls were just the Indian tribes keeping track of who's a member of their tribe. These tribes had no say over what's placed on the roll. These rolls are created by the same imperial colonial force that displaced them from the Southeast. And now they're coming over here 60 years later to displace them again because their land has oil beneath it. And then what's crazy is I even show people how to search the Dawes roll. I use my great-great-grandfather Pleasant Tobler as an example. His roll number is 1017. I show them, he's listed right here. Pleasant Tobler, 2 years old, male, blood quantum 1/2. There's that roll number 1017. He's listed as a Creek by blood newborn. And if you look here closely, most people don't realize if you're listed as a Creek Freedman or a Choctaw Freedman or a Chickasaw Freedman or a Cherokee Freedman, it doesn't matter the tribe, everybody labeled as a freedman has a blank spot in the blood quantum section because that racist Dawes roll agent didn't record a blood quantum. So when people run around saying the freedmen have no Indian blood, the proper phrase would be the freedmen did not have their blood quantum recorded.
Yes. I totally agree. I'm glad you said that. I totally agree.
and then on top of it, it gets worse.
And I'm gonna show you that. I'm gonna show you something like that.
Yeah. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're gonna be here for a minute, and everybody's here for it. But guys, this is where they start to hide the history in plain sight. In recent years, we've all heard of Tulsa, Black Wall Street. Guys, the foundation for Black Wall Street was laid before Oklahoma statehood in 1907. Before Oklahoma becomes a state in 1907, this is Indian territory. How did all these Black people have all this land in Indian territory to the point where they could start not one, not two? There was over 55 successful Black towns across Indian territory. Well, they were able to do that because they weren't Black folks. These were American Indians who were oftentimes using their federal land allotments to start communities, to establish towns. Furthermore, let's talk about someone by the name of Sarah Rector. A lot of you have heard of Sarah Rector now that movie Sarah's Oil has come out. A lot of you are still not familiar, but if I bring this from the back to the front, you'll remember her. We see this circulating on social media from time to time. Sarah Rector, the richest, youngest colored girl in the world in the early 1900s. They call her the richest Negro girl in the world, right? I even saw that movie. They don't mention how her family got that land, not once in the movie. A lot of us hear like rumors, her family had some land, that's why she's rich, or her family had some oil, that's why they're rich. The family land, let's start here. The family land was located in Oklahoma. The family held title to that land before Oklahoma statehood of 1907. Before Oklahoma statehood, it's Indian territory. How does this Negro girl and her Negro family have land in Indian territory? Because they were allotted it by the Dawes Commission.
That's it.
But you've never heard Sarah Rector described as an Indian girl, as a Creek Indian girl. They don't call her that not once in the movie. They don't even talk about the land allotments and the Dawes Commission. Matter of fact, if we go to her Wikipedia page, you'll see how bad they play in our face. You go to her Wikipedia page, and this is how they describe her. Check this out, y'all. Check this out. They call Sarah Rector on her own Wikipedia page a Black grandchild of Creek Indians. Sarah Rector was recognized as a Muscogee Creek Indian, just like I am. Her and her family would have had citizenship cards similar to this, but you've never heard her described as a Muscogee Creek Indian. Instead, they're going to tell us that she's the Black grandchild of Creek Indians. Last time I checked, if your grandparents are Creek Indians and your parents are Creek Indians, then you're a Creek Indian. But no. Anything except calling this girl an Indian. Matter of fact, it's so crazy. You may not even know this, Ron. She was so rich and so prominent in the early 1900s that they legally changed her designation in the state of Oklahoma to white. So she could sit in the front of the train and go to the fancy restaurants. They'll call this little black girl white before they ever call her an Indian.
Yeah. I'm actually related to Sarah Richter. My grandmother, my grandmother and Sarah Richter's grandmother, they were sisters, I believe. So, and I got that all documented. Okay, so
come on.
Yeah, I know a lot about her. Okay?
So we force the Indians to get land allotments. We end up tricking them out of the land allotments. Leftover land, we open up to European settlement. That's where you get the Sooners and the Booners, guys. They literally had land rushes, land lotteries. The Sooners are the crooked white folks who went out there a couple days early and staked their claim in Indian territory, right?
Yeah.
But not only that, you've got Europeans just fraudulently paying $5 to get placed on the Dawes roll. $5 back then. In today's currency, it's about $165, which is a great investment, right? Pay $160 to get listed as an Indian and get 160 acres of land in oil country. Whoa. Man. Not only that, some people don't even notice when I'm doing these one-on-one consultations and I'm going through this Dawes roll here, I make sure to highlight Caroline Crowder. Caroline Crowder, for her blood quantum, says IW. I ask my clients all the time, do you know what IW says? What it means? They said, no, I don't understand IW. Explain that to me, Mike. IW stands for intermarried white. Yeah. This white woman finessed her way to marrying a Choctaw Indian man. She don't get placed on some separate intermarried white roll. She's placed on the Choctaw by blood roll. She gets a blood quantum. But people who were genetically Muscogee Creek, who had the ancestry, the heritage, the customs, they get reclassified as freedmen, get no blood quantum listed at all because of the color of their skin, because their nose was a little too broad, because they weren't light enough. Come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So guys, this is the whole reason why I brought up the whiteboard. What you've got to understand, as crafty as the government is, we have the same exact thing going on at the same time in two different parts of the country. Formerly, some enslaved, some of them free, but either way, we've got Black Indigenous people in the South who did not walk the Trail of Tears, who were taken as prisoners of war, who were enslaved in place, who were reclassified as Negro, mulatto, colored, etc. But these Black Indigenous people, after the Civil War ends in 1865, they all get their wealth stolen and reclassified as freedmen by who? By the Freedmen's Bureau. This is the government agency that was responsible for stealing the wealth and reclassifying these Black Indigenous people as freedmen down south, the Freedmen Bureau. And at the same time, roundabout, you've got another government agency reclassifying Indians as freedmen and stealing their wealth, stealing their land. But this one is called the Dawes Commission. Two different government programs running at the same exact time. Furthermore, we don't really need to get too caught up in the weeds, but and I got a book I'm gonna use as a primary source as well. Most people don't know we've been totally given a heavily sanitized version of history. The Civil War, the North coming to the South, it was never about freeing no slaves. It was originally not even called the Emancipation Proclamation. It was called the Emancipation Deportation. Don't take my word. Do your own research. Absolutely. The first time a president ever invited Black people to the White House is when Abraham Lincoln invited prominent religious free colored people to the White House to try to convince them to convince the rest of Black America to freely immigrate to another land. He actually had colonization schemes and experiments. Look up Laconia or the Isle of Aceh. He actually ran tests where he would send recently emancipated people to an island off the coast of Haiti, telling them, hey guys, you're going to be free. You're going to start your own country. It'll be a better life for you. It ended in disaster. Most of them died. They had to be rescued by the U.S. Navy. But I say all that to say, our twisted version of the Civil War that we get is so far from the truth. Lincoln is quoted many times as saying, if I can end the war and not free a single slave, I would do it. He didn't even free the slaves until they were already losing to the South. The war had already started. Furthermore, he didn't even free all the slaves. He only freed slaves in rebel territories. If you weren't a rebel territory, you can still keep your slaves. But then on top of that, here's the real kicker. At the end of the day, no one got their freedom. You guys don't realize that. They call it emancipation. They said there's an Emancipation Proclamation, but all we really had was a new legalized form of slavery. This same Freedmen's Bureau created these freedmen labor contracts. I've read them. They'll literally say, you're going to go back to that same plantation you were a slave on. You're going to work sun up to sundown 6 days a week. You're going to still call that person master. You're going to live in those same slave quarters as before. But listen, you're not a slave no more. You're free, because we're going to put right here that when harvest time comes, you're supposed to get a share of the crop. So they call it sharecropping. But in actuality, when harvest time comes, the slave master, I mean, your employer now, he brings out a ledger and says, you know what? I know I owe you 30% of the crop, but you owe me back rent for that shack you've been living in. You owe me back rent for the tools I've been lending you, for the food I've been giving you. Oh, you got sick a few times this year? I'm gonna need a doctor pay for that. Matter of fact, it looks like you're in debt to me. You owe me. And now you're working for free just for a roof over your head. Guys, this was slavery by another name. Just like this book written by Douglas A. Blackman, Slavery by Another Name, the re-enslavement of Black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. So again, legalized slavery with the illusion of choice. Hey, if you don't want to go sign up to be a employee of a plantation in the South, you've got an option. You're free. Here's your two options. You either go back to a plantation in the South, or you migrate up north and go work in a factory plantation system. I mean, guys, they really gave them nothing more than the illusion of choice. They had something called and hold on real quick, Ron, I'm going to mute you. They had something called vagrancy acts, where if you're in the South and they think you're idle, they see that you don't have a contract with the Freedmen's Bureau, they'll actually put you in jail and put you in a chain gang and send you to a plantation to work. They had loitering laws. They had vagrancy acts, which basically forces you to go sign up to be a laborer on a plantation or go follow the Great Migration North and see how you like the city life. Both options, terrible. The North turns a blind eye at the end of the Civil War when the KKK is formed in 1865 and all those Black massacres start to sprout up. All the lynchings and the killings and the bombings, most people don't realize it wasn't happening like you think during slavery. Yes, there was situations, there was rebellions, but most of these massacres, most of these straight up genocidal acts were right after the end of the Civil War. And the North just turned the other way like they didn't see anything that was going on. And one point that I'll use before I let Ron jump back in is if you actually look at this map, I've got a map right here. And coincidentally, if you look at a map of the indigenous tribes of the Southeast, we know them by their more modern names, right? Appalachee, Seminole, Tuscaloosa, Wale, etc., right? But in the same area where since the early days of colonialism, European explorers have remarked that these were copper-colored, dark brown indigenous people, right? Well, in that same area, into the Civil War, we've got all these Black massacres, same location. The same people who are reclassified, who are displaced, are still in the same area for the most part. And after the end of the Civil War, oh boy, does all hell break loose. Look at the dates on this. Look at the dates. But Ron, if you want to jump in real quick, I think you might have had some more documents that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I was just gonna do a quick run on my family on my paternal side.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, can you get my slides back up?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay, okay, that's my pedigree chart. Like yourself, Michael, I do genealogy for folks. So there go my dad right here. And actually in 1910, he was 8, but they got him down as, you can see, race, Indian, Native American. Okay. Again, his mother is down the same census, Native American. This is her dad. And he actually, look at the year, birthday, 1826 in Alabama. Yes, he came over the Trail of Tears. Okay. They're on the Indian census population in 1910. That's them right there, just blown up. And my dad stayed right next, the family stayed right next door to Joe Hutton. That's them at the bottom. That's them right there, classifying them as Negro and Creeks. This is my dad's census card. He's down as Newborn Creek. And again, you see where the blood quantum is at? There's nothing listed there. They just listed nothing at all. But it was approved by the Secretary of Interior. In his census card, there is a enrollment application. This was in his enrollment application. It's a birth affidavit. It is equivalent to a birth certificate. And like Michael has stated, if you were a citizen of the Creek Nation, you receive 160 acres. That's my dad's land right there and his siblings. This is his mother's census card. She's if my dad, he was on the newborn roll, there was just one page. But if you on the Freedman roll, there was 2 pages. This is the front page. And that's the back page. It lists your father, father's owner if he had one, and what tribal town. You see what tribal town they listed her in. It's Canadian. There was 3 tribal towns with the Creek Nation. Arkansas, North Fork, and Canadian. And they listed her in the Canadian tribal town. And they listed her father, Joe Hutton, in the North Fork on this card. But when you go to, that's how it looks when you put them side by side. It's line 1, 2, 3, and on down, you know. This is Joe Hutton's census card. And on there, he's not actually, they place him in his actual tribal town. See, Joe Hutton, roll number is to the left. And a roll number is equivalent to a social security number, okay, for that tribe. So, but it talks about Joe Hutton, 72, male, 1890, but his actual tribal town is Sketchupataki. And that's the same tribal town your great grandfather is in, Michael, Thomas J. Adams. He's in the same tribal town. And Thomas J. Adams' wife, her mother is in the same tribal town of that right there.
Wow.
Okay.
That's important history right there. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back for you. There you go.
No, you good. What I want people to see is that again, it was approved. I want you to read all that information. Remember, we talked about that Dunn roll on the Oklahoma Red Book. The Dawes Commission is going off of that. This is what happened in the Dunn roll with the Dunn roll. J.W. Dunn done a roll of everybody by blood or freedmen in the Creek Nation. What happened, there were so many people of African descent, even $5 Indians, they would come in, but if a $5 Indian didn't look like an Indian, he may not got enrolled. But then you had African Americans coming in saying they were on the Creek Nation roll, that Dunn roll. But no, if they didn't find your name as an African on that Dunn roll, chances are you were not getting enrolled in the Creek Nation. And that's what that Dunn roll was about. There's a back page front page and the back page for the Creek Nation. There go the land that they received. Each Creek citizen received 160 acres. This is Joe Hutton testifying. This is him. And this one of the ones they went by this a while back. The Creek Nation did to try to get enrolled. If a person tried to get enrolled. Testimony of Joe Grayson Sr. is about 74 years old. He is a farmer and a Creek citizen. Belonged to Hilubi Town, Eufaula District. He is the father of Joseph Grayson Jr. He's sometimes called Joe Hutton. His owner's name was Nancy Hutton. Grayson's father was half-breed. They got a blood quantum right there. Half Indian and half colored. His mother was a black woman named Venus. His father was Jim Grayson, Indian named Chinichakti at Coweta Town. So that told you a lot. Even where he lived in Sodom. Okay? But that gave a blood quantum right there. But it is not listed on his census card. All right. Now, when Joe Hutton said he stayed in Hilubi Town, Eufaula District, this is what he's talking about. It's highlighted right there.
Wait, hold on. A quick question. So the documents that have your ancestor listed with a blood quantum, what is the year on that again?
That's in between 1874 and 1895.
So between 1874 and 1895, 1874, 1895 or 75? Okay, 95. So between 1874 and 1895, your ancestor is listed as an Indian with a blood quantum, but somewhere, and I think it's probably with the 1898 Dawes roll, is where he gets placed on the roll with no blood quantum listed.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened right there.
Wow. See, and that's such an important distinction to highlight, because a lot of people, they'll find the evidence with the 1898 Dawes roll of their ancestor being classified as freedmen and not having a blood quantum recorded. But you went decades prior, found documentation with him listed with a blood quantum, but still in later years, there would be a new roll that omits that blood quantum.
And notice what they're putting here, Michael. It says his owner was Nancy Hutton. He may have been a slave, but it's still listing a blood quantum, which they took that away from him. Now his true identity is gone. It's gone right now.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about. All these tribal towns. See, you had districts and tribal towns. If you were native by blood, they placed you in the Indian tribal town. If you were listed as a freedman, they would place you in a freedman tribal town. Okay. And now after that, they've said that they have determined that he is a citizen. Now, a few years later, he's going to them in 1899 saying, okay, he's getting land. And look what he's saying here. What is your name, Joe Hutton? Are you a citizen? Are you a citizen of the Muscogee Nation? Yes. What town do you belong to? Ketchapatake, Hilubi. And this is what he's talking about. It's in Eufaula District. Remember, he testified. It was in Eufaula District. It's highlighted. Hilubi is down there at the bottom. Ketchapatake is right there. It's highlighted up the top where it says Eufaula District. And when you put them side by side, that's what you're looking at. If you were placed in a Creek by blood tribal town, they place you in a tribal town to the right. If you was placed in a freedman tribal town, you could be in the same household, but somebody can be on the tribal town that's on the by blood, the other one with freedman. Here's a list of most of the tribal towns written in English and in Creek. That's the Creek Freedmen tribal towns right there. Act of May 27, 1908. This was a very important act, which is supposed to be utilized today, even today. But the Bureau of Indian Affairs do not utilize this act, and they supposed to. That's why I tell people the BIA doesn't have clean hands here. They need to, if someone could prove, some people have their true identity, such they can find a blood quantum that and should be able to obtain a CDIB card, a certificate of degree of Indian blood card. But with that label, with that Freedman label, they can't obtain one. Proof of death and heirship record, a vital and important document right there. Sometimes this document, it actually gave you your true identity. That's my dad that's highlighted. On this document I obtained from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, it has him down as 1/8. But then, as you can see, it put the children of his siblings, the whole siblings should be 1/8, which they are. And the siblings, if mathematically, should be 1/16. But they placed them down as colored. This is them on that same document. There's just listed them all, the children of Creasy Graham. And this document was adjudicated and signed by Weta Johnson, which I knew her. They called her Aunt Sunday. That is my great-grandfather with the rifle. My grandmother's to the standing up at the right there. With all these folks are Creek Freedmen descended, and their siblings, except the two girls at the bottom there standing up. Those two are just siblings right there. This is Joe Hutton. He has one of the historic all-black towns here in Oklahoma. It's highlighted Huttonville. It's called Huttonville. Only thing out there now is the churches, a few houses, and a cemetery that is out there. I just wrote this. Actually, this language was in the Cherokee Nation ruling. It talked about the by blood. Okay, and this the same way I feel about the by blood. And you see how the Supreme Court, even the Muscogee Creek Nation Judicial Court, is stated the by blood is unlawful and void ab initio. And that's all I have. And I appreciate you, Mike, for giving me this opportunity to talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And something that I do want to highlight that most people don't realize is when we talk about Europeans being in charge of tribal roles and doing a whole bunch of fraud, that is not exclusive to the Creek Nation. That's not even exclusive to the 5 civilized tribes. Yeah. If you look it up, if you do your own research, investigate how many tribal roles had fraud, had to be thrown out, had to be redone. There's over a dozen tribal roles from all across the country. Wow. 1867, you've got the Casquilla list that had fraud. 1871, you got the Stockbridge-Munsee enrollment. You got Cherokee pre-Dawes citizenship rolls that had a lot of fraud. The federal government stepped in. You had the list literally goes on and on. You got the Osage roll, 1906, 1907. 244 people from 11 families were challenged as fraudulently enrolled. You got the White Earth Chippewa roll from 1911 to 1913. The federal administration stepped in and did a purification of the White Earth rolls because there was so much fraudulent enrollment. Come on. So when you talk about $5 Indians and we talk about fraudulent enrollment, we're just scratching the surface when we talk about the Dawes Commission or the Dawes Roll. And actually, if you could, let's circle back to the Dunn Roll. If you can break that down even further, because from what I understand, I forget his first name, but his last name was Dunn, right?
J.W. Dunn, yeah.
J.W. Dunn, okay. So J.W. Dunn, he completed the rolls months before the deadline for displaced Creek citizens to return to Indian territory. A lot of people don't realize that. Like there was a date where all Creek Indians who left Indian territory had to come back and get signed up on this roll, but Dunn closed the roll months before all of the Creek Indians could come back. So how many Creek Indians were just left off the Dunn roll altogether?
That's right. That's right. It was a lot that was left off of that Dunn roll. But it was mainly used actually for people of African descent, although it was for all citizens, because when the Dawes Commission, if just like myself, you see what I look like. Okay, let's say I was not on the Dunn roll, then they would not consider me to be placed on that Dawes roll. Okay, because when you do your research as a freedman, everybody leads to somebody on that Dunn roll. Just about, not everybody. Most of the freedmen list to somebody on the Dunn roll, but there is also by blood folks on that Dunn roll. It was that Dunn roll was a roll of citizenship for everybody that was in the Creek Nation. Okay, everybody. And all you have to do is take a look at it, and you also see that.
Absolutely. And you know what? Before we start opening up this Q&A session, and guys, if you have any questions for me or Ron, go ahead and post them in the chat right now. We'll highlight the questions, answer to the best of our abilities. But can we just quickly touch again on the Oklahoma Red Book? I really didn't even know about the Oklahoma Red Book until I got in touch with you, but this is kind of like an official historical archive of like what was going on in Indian territory before Oklahoma statehood or in the early days of Oklahoma statehood.
The very early stage of Oklahoma statehood. Okay. What they did was codify all these laws, and they put them in a 2-volume book. But both books are called Oklahoma Red Book. When you take a look at it, it has all these laws in these books. Instead of just having laws all over, you see some law officers have hundreds of law books. What they did was had made 2 volumes, and they put it in a book that's called Oklahoma Red Book. I've studied most of that, what it had to say, the Oklahoma Red Book. Okay, it's just a condensed version of laws and things of that nature.
I got you for sure. Yeah. And then you know what? I've got some questions that I jotted down earlier. Let me see. And you know, this question has already been answered. It was whether or not you agree with the term people of African descent. You know, were these people African descent based on genealogy or specifically based on phenotype? And then it seemed like just anybody who was colored, who wasn't white passing, basically is alleged to have African descent.
Yeah, that's it. It was something visual. Actually, I found a citizenship application where on this application it says they looked at a person, they visually looked at a person to see what he looked like. It was the language he spoke. It had this on that application. So no, it was something they just purely looked at, and that was it. Sometimes they did give testimony. Oh, my mother was this, or she was Cherokee, or she was this. I've even seen where it was some Native Americans that said, "How do you count blood?" They was asking them, "Were you 1/4, 1/8?" They simply said, "How do you count it?" You know, they were simply citizens. That's it. They had been there all their lives. So that's how they looked at things.
Well, not only are they simply citizens, but most people don't realize that blood quantum is a complete pseudo-science.
Absolutely.
It is not real. It's totally made up. The only thing in the world that goes by blood quantum are dogs and Native Americans. I wonder why. A blood quantum is exclusively what a racist Dawes Commission agent wrote or didn't write down under your ancestor. I mean, your blood, they weren't doing a blood test back then. They weren't doing a DNA test. They didn't say, let me swab your cheek and determine if you're 1/16th Creek or if you're this or if you're that. And actually, hold on a second. I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to go back to the Dawes Rolls so that I can give you guys a visual representation of what I'm going to break down right now, because again, this is a complete, utter pseudo-science. If we go back to Pleasant Tobler, right? Roll number 1017. People will ask me all the time during these genealogy consultations I do. They say, well, hey, Mike, Pleasant Tobler, his blood quantum is 1/2. Why is that? Were one of his parents European, the other one Indian? Were one of his parents African, the other one Indian? No, both of his parents were full-blood Creek Indians. But his father, Fred Tobler, was too dark-skinned. So Fred got reclassified as a Freedman. Freedmen don't get a blood quantum. So now Pleasant only has his mama with a blood quantum. So now he's 1/2 Indian blood.
Yeah.
If you look at my tribal citizenship card, it says my blood quantum is 1/32. When me and my family applied to be citizens of the Creek Nation in 2021, they didn't ask for a DNA test. Yeah. They didn't ask for us to send in blood samples. They based my blood quantum exclusively off of what my ancestors are classified as. And unless you know about tribal issues amongst different tribes, a lot of you may not know that all across the country, many tribes are actually having to reconcile with this whole blood quantum thing, because if more and more of your tribal members have babies with people who aren't listed as members of your tribe, then your blood quantum, it eventually just erodes. It fades away. It ceases to exist. There's some tribes like the Creek Nation had a collaborative live stream with the media YouTube channel, and this live stream was with the Creek Nation and the Oneida Indians. I think they're out in like the Great Lakes or Wisconsin or something. Even the Oneida tribe is having issues determining, do we just get rid of blood quantum or not? Because more and more of our citizens move off the res, have babies with people who aren't Indian, or maybe are Indian, but they're not Indians of our tribe. If one of your parents Cherokee, one of your parents Creek, and you're applying to be part of the Creek, they're still only going to count your ancestor that's Creek. They're not going to count the Cherokee. They're not going to count other tribal affiliations. So, the more as time rolls on, the more interesting it's going to get with this whole blood quantum controversy, because it is a complete and utter pseudo-science. It does not exist. It never has.
Absolutely. That blood quantum on the 1900 or 1910 census, there is a column that talks about blood quantum. And what it says is how much white blood that this Indian has. It's on a census. Have you ever seen that before?
I never seen that one, no.
I don't have it. I need this that time. One. We need to do another one.
Oh yeah, we will. We'll definitely do another one. Maybe a couple more.
I want to show you what it says. It says, this is what it says. Has this Indian any white blood? If so, how much? It says on the census. It's unbelievable what they're talking about. And there's an act, the Burke Act, Burke. Mm-hmm. The Burke Act back in 1906, something like that. And it talks about the more white blood you have, the more capable you are, or competent you are. It's a competent and capable act. That's what it does. I didn't have it on my PowerPoint. I wish I would have. But there is so many documentation out there. There's so much documentation out there. So
and also though, that kind of makes sense as to why when a lot of Black folks who aren't privy to this information, when they think of American Indians, when they think of some of these people on the reservations, they think to themselves, man, a lot of these people look like white people to me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
A lot of these people, well, there were white families who fraudulently got listed within the tribe, or a
Yeah.
whole bunch of white people that intermarried into the tribe,
Yeah.
or over time, some indigenous groups, maybe for fear of self-preservation, that they'll willingly have babies with Europeans and stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of mixing going on. Most people don't know, since the early 1500s, Scott-Irish settlers have been coming into the Southeast and marrying Creek women, Choctaw women, a bunch of different tribes. Matter of fact, when you even hear the adage of oh, the Indians had black folks as slaves, oh, black folks was just slave of the Indians, we've got to be much more specific than that. Not every single Creek Indian had a slave, and the ones that were slaveholders, more often than not, they had European ancestry. There's always been civil wars. There was even the Red Stick War. There's been wars within our own tribe for centuries now over the members of our tribe that mix with Europeans and then act as agent provocateurs on behalf of their European daddies. Whenever you guys hear about an Indian that signed the tribe's land away and now the tribe walks the Trail of Tears, don't take my word for it. Look it up. Every single one of those Indians that signed the treaty, whether it's the Cherokee Treaty, whether it's the Creek Treaty, whether it's the Choctaw, every single one of those Indians had a Scott-Irish father and an Indian mother. Our tribe's half-breed sellout, his name is William McIntosh. And you'll see how deep the rabbit hole goes. William McIntosh was a fake chief. He was never appointed as a chief by the tribe, but his daddy's a wealthy Scott-Irish man. His mama's a Creek Indian. American Indian tribes are matrilineal. We accept you based on your mother's ancestry. So he gets to come and go within the tribe. We don't look at him differently or anything. He's invited to the proverbial cookout. But the Europeans are mixing with the indigenous groups to create this caste system of agent provocateurs. Guess who William McIntosh's cousin was? The Georgia governor, George Troup. William McIntosh is brokering Creek Indians as slaves to his cousin, who's the governor. Governor had the biggest plantation, bunch of Creek Indians and slaves, and at the same time, the governor is getting his half-breed Creek cousin to sign false treaties to result in the tribe getting displaced. And this was not just the Creek tribe; it was the Choctaw, it was the Look it up. Look up the names. I bet you it's going to be some Montgomery, some McIntosh. Guys, that's why so many black folks, especially in the Southeast, have these Irish, Scottish surnames. They've been intermixing in our communities for a long time. And guess what our tribe did when we found out what William McIntosh did? We went out to his plantation because, like I said, the slaveholding Indians were the half-breed sellouts. We went to his plantation, burnt it to the ground, and he was shot over 57 times. He was assassinated by Creek Indians. Yeah. And I believe the Cherokee half-breed sellout that signed that tribe's land away, he had an assassination attempt. I think he survived it. But guys, this is what's been going on for a long time. And actually, case in point, there was an article that I found in a newspaper called the Rhode Islander. The headline of the article is, "When is an Indian not an Indian? It's when he's a Negro." And then this article from the early 1900s, they're talking about how in Southampton, there's a whole community of Black Indians who are being reclassified as Negro, colored. They're supposed to accept this Africanized version of their history. And we actually get a glaring confession in one of the pages of this newspaper article from a census taker. Look at what this census taker says. Who is an Indian? When the United States government counts heads, it says we are whatever we say we are. A census taker now working in South Kingstown is in preparation for the 1970 census said recently, quote, "If they tell me they are Indian and they look Negro, I put down what they say and change it later. Aren't Indians supposed to have high cheekbones?"
Wow.
Come on.
Wow.
So, I mean, when we talk about Black Americans having indigenous roots, this isn't this isn't like a fallacy. This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't, oh, we're ashamed to be African. Actually, it's quite the opposite. When Black Americans believed that Pan-African propaganda all through the 80s and the 90s, we were the proudest Africans in the world. We rocking dashikis and ankhs and talking about Imhotep, Amun-Ra, and all this kind of stuff. But as soon as we actually start looking at documents and actually start tracing our family tree and actually talk to our grandparents, say, hey, yeah, so we're African. No, we're Creek. No, we're Cherokee. No, we're Blackfoot. I mean, guys, Are we going to believe the colonial education that's been given to us by our colonizer, or are we going to believe the documents and the genealogical records? Come on. But I want to be conscious of your time, Ram. So I got some questions here. We'll go through them in rapid fashion. But the first question, or the next question rather, is can you explain more about these Freedman court cases? I believe there were instances where Creek Indians were demonstrating against this Freedman label. They were trying to fight it through some kind of legal means or something of the sort, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, the bad blood and free, they were Creek, okay? They didn't want that label because, for one thing, they knew things like this was going to come about. They just didn't want that label, especially it was the label that the African Americans had down south. Okay, some of that knew what was going on, so they just didn't like that label. I mean,
I didn't connect the dots until right now. That's right. When we talk about the Freedmen Bureau and whatnot, and that Freedman label popping up in the South, that's after the end of the Civil War, 1865. So they already kind of set the precedent with that.
yeah,
And now here comes the Dawes Commission using that same playbook in 1898.
absolutely. They just didn't want that label, and now, as you can see, we're still saying that word Freedman. This is 2026. And we're still using that terminology. Ain't that?
Mhm.
I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, we're Creek citizens, just like I'm an American citizen. I'm not an American freedman. You know, I'm a Creek citizen, born as a Creek citizen. Hey, so I just don't. I personally don't like it.
Yep. And, you know, we did get another question through social media. We've kind of touched on this already, so you can just give a brief answer. But they asked, were all freedmen slaves?
No. Some freedmen were full blood Creek. I can prove that. Okay. I just can't do it now. I deal with documents, folks. So if we have another one of these, I will personally have.
Well, hold on. I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you already proved it. Well, when your ancestor gets placed on the Dawes roll and they don't write down the blood quantum, did he get placed on the by blood roll or as a freedman?
Oh, as a freedman that day.
So you already proved it, Rob.
Okay.
Come on. 1860s, he got a blood quantum. He an Indian. He lived in this town. But
Absolutely.
1898, now he's a freedman all of a sudden.
Yeah. So, and then my dad and his siblings, they ended up on that proof of death and heirship paper as 1/8. They got that from somewhere. Okay. So, and then listed their kids as colored. Now, mathematically, they're 1/16. Okay. But
so hey, it's a pseudo-science to begin with, but even if we're following their pseudo logic, they should still be 1/16. I mean,
absolutely.
And I see it all the time in census records. I'll have genealogy clients where I'll show them how one single ancestor of theirs will be racially reclassified as several different labels. 1840s, they're listed somewhere as an Indian. 1860 census, they're listed as a mulatto. 1880, they're now colored. 1900, they're now a Negro. I've seen instances where the mother and the father are both listed all their lives as a mulatto. As soon as their child gets placed on the census, they're Negro, they're Black. Come on.
Oh yeah, it's all sorts of things out there. So,
and you know what? Next question here. And I'll actually start this off with a bit of a statement, and then we'll see your opinion on it. Earlier, I asked you, why do you think the tribe is dragging ass with, accepting the citizenship applications from those designated as freedmen? And you said that you don't really know. It could be racism. It could be fraud or something of the sort. I know behind the scenes, off the record, I asked you about the casino funds because I haven't been a Creek citizen my whole life. I, like many of you Black Americans, just were programmed to believe we came from Africa. And then one day I said, you know what, let me challenge that narrative. And as soon as I went looking, I found the proof, I found the documents, we applied for citizenship, etc. But as soon as I became a citizen, as soon as I really saw the broad range of benefits we have access to, and I even used a couple of those benefits at a time or another, I started to wonder why. I have a half sister named Angelique. My half sister Angelique, she's part of a whole different tribe through her mother. She's a part of their tribe's council. She's all in the politics. And I would always hear about these monthly payments, them giving tribal members $5,000, $10,000 a month as per cap payments.
Yeah, per cap.
It's supposed to be like spreading around the wealth from the casinos or whatever, profits that the tribe generates. And I always wondered, why does the Creek Nation not give any kind of monthly per cap payment? And as soon as I started investigating it, the official narrative was, well, some tribes give monthly per cap payments and some tribes give access to social services. And then the immediate question that came to mind was, how many billions of dollars per year does our tribe generate through casino profits, and how much does it actually cost to fund these services that we have? Because I understand at this time you don't have Creek citizenship. I'm not sure if you've looked into the benefits that much. It's really not all that it's cracked up to be. I mean, being recognized as a Creek Indian, being recognized as a member of the tribe of your ancestors is one thing. But when we're talking about tangible benefits, I mean, I think it's like $500 check to buy your kids some school clothes. I think they got like a hardship program that's like another $500 for a couple months. Certain colleges you can get free or reduced tuition, but the benefits really aren't something to write home about. So in your opinion, do you think that them dragging out the freedman citizenship has something to do more specifically with the fact that if they get rid of the by blood legislation, then what also changes is you don't have to meet a blood quantum requirement to be on the national council or to be chief of the tribe? Technically speaking, when the freedmen come back in and the blood quantum is gone away, any Creek citizen can be voted in as a national council member, or any Creek citizen can run for chief of the tribe. And if somebody with a different mindset sat on that national council or became chief, I wonder if there would be some reorganization of where the funds are going. I wonder if there would even be an audit of what's been going on with the funds. I've called the tribe. I said, yo, can I get a report of like how much does our tribe even generate? Oh, no, we don't know how to get that. That's not publicly available.
Well, what I say about that would be an audit. I'm going to start with that right now. Because on the news, I think it was last year sometime, if I'm not mistaken, someone embezzled $25 million, I think. How did he get away with that? It hasn't been
in the Creek tribe.
In the Creek Nation.
In the Creek Nation, we had a fraud case of $25 million.
How would that person or those somebodies get away with that? Okay, you think about that. There's not been an audit. I've been told there has not been one audit. Why is that? Who's policing these folks? I don't know what was going to happen. I don't know what they expect. Okay, I really don't. But there's something very problematic when it comes to something like that. Okay, I don't know. So, but
and as this viewer said, it's all greed. Remember, they started building those casinos 1980. Yeah, the same time that the freedmen get kicked out, we got all these tribes getting contracts to form casinos.
Yeah.
Coincidence? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's something to think about, But I believe, just as an American, if anyone is a Creek citizen, I don't care if you're 1/4, 1/8, 1/2,000 or something. I've seen a card like that, but it doesn't matter if you're blood quantum. If you're a Creek citizen, American citizen, Cherokee, you should be able to. The office should be open for anyone. Okay.
Hey, I don't know, Ron. I think they might be afraid to get someone like Mike or someone like Ron a part of the governing body of the Creek Nation. I think some things would have to change. At least an audit. At bare minimum, we need
absolutely. At least police us then. If you're afraid, see what I'm doing. See what's going on. Police us. Put an audit. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just. I mean, I know one thing. Everybody needs an opportunity. I should have an opportunity. You know what? It may be some that is 1/8 are thrilled to death because this is happening, and because how the judges ruled. That means it opens it up. It opens it up for them. You know,
Yep.
it gives.
And I'm definitely in that category. Yeah. As soon as I realized, wait a minute, when the Creek Freedmen thing went through, that means by blood is out the window. That means that Mike could run to be on the National Council or something. I mean, that changes the whole dynamic. Again, I grew up with a half sister who's a part of the politics of her tribe since she was like 18. She's on this board, on the council, right? I've always been someone who's been involved in politics. I worked on Senator Omnibar's campaign in California for political think tanks. So to be able to take that political prowess and use it on behalf of the tribe would be a powerful thing. But I have a blood quantum requirement that I'm not meeting because of how my ancestors were classified. So on the one hand, we got Ron, who can't even get citizenship at all right now. Then you got Mike, who has citizenship, but can't participate in the politics of the tribe because of the blood quantum. Come on.
Well, yeah, I'm glad they ruled like they did. I'm delighted. I mean, about give anybody an opportunity. It may be someone out there that could really help the Creek Nation. You never know. Mm-hmm. So, and it may be somebody out there that may try to hurt the Creek Nation. But the Creek Nation, we shouldn't let that happen.
And last question I got for you, Ron. As a genealogist, this is something I've always wanted to do, but I've got so many clients from across the country who I research their genealogy to where I just haven't had the free time to do this yet. But I've always thought about researching the genealogy of some of those 4 National Council members who kicked out the freedmen, or maybe even the genealogy of some of these people who have been previous chiefs, because it's my understanding that at a certain point in time around the late 1800s, early 1900s, the federal government said, hey, guess what, Indians, you don't get to elect your chiefs anymore. They have to be approved by the United States government. And I know with the Cherokee especially, there's famous chiefs, I think his name might even be called Cherokee Bill, where he was like mostly European, had like a sliver of Cherokee ancestry, but he gets to be the chief of the whole entire tribe, right? Mm-hmm. So I wonder, when we look at some of these political figures who've been trying to keep the freedmen out, what is their heritage really like? Are they descendants of Scot-Irish settlers who mixed in with the tribe? Are these folks even full-blooded Creeks themselves? I mean, this has been something I've always wondered, but have you yourself ever, taken on to task to look into any of these folks' genealogy?
No, I have not. I know who was on the National Council at that time, but no, I have not took a step further to do that.
I got you. Yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to find some time to take a crack at. But guys, now you should really see why Ron and I are so passionate about the subject, why we're genealogists, because I tell people all the time, just because you have indigenous ancestry, it doesn't mean you can get tribal citizenship. It's a heavily politicized process. But just because you have tribal citizenship doesn't mean you shouldn't. You should be kept from identifying as indigenous or researching that part of your lineage. And I feel like we are a perfect juxtaposition, because you, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, you were born and raised all your life knowing about your Creek ancestors. You're born and raised in Oklahoma. You know the towns that they're from, et cetera, et cetera. Yet you're barred from citizenship. Yeah. Then you got somebody like me who didn't know any about this, wasn't raised with this tradition, grew up in California, far removed from this. But when I started doing my own research and I found it, I was able to get tribal citizenship. And this goes to show you that there's a wide spectrum within this diaspora of Black folks, where some of us know our heritage, can substantiate it. Some of us know our heritage, have yet to trace the paper trail genealogical records. I mean, there's so many different boats that a lot of members of our community find themselves in. And, in my opinion, and I'm sure you would share the sentiment, Ron, in my opinion, it all starts with doing your family's genealogy.
Absolutely.
Map out your family tree. You'll figure out whether they were even enslaved, whether they were free. I mean, I got clients who think that they're from Texas. I show them, no, your folks are from Virginia. They migrated to Texas at this date.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I grew up
totally
all my
agree.
life thinking that I'm from Northern California. My dad's side of the family's from Bakersfield. No, before Bakersfield, they were in Oklahoma. Matter of fact, they were in Oklahoma when it was Indian territory. Matter of fact, they walked the Trail of Tears. Matter of fact, before the Trail of Tears, they're from Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Who would have ever thought? Come on.
Something else. Yeah, do your genealogy, or to get someone like yourself or myself. Let's get it done. So hey, I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, hey, Ron, it was a pleasure having you on. We'll definitely talk behind the scenes about doing another collaboration like this. And also for anybody who's going to be watching later, I know you have an event coming up. So if you want to shout out that event or anything, go for it.
Yes. It's next Wednesday at 1:00 at the St. Matthew's Missionary Baptist Church here in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. It'd be 1:00 Central Time. Open to the public. Anybody's welcome. We're going to go through a lot of other things, but mostly we're going to talk about this right here, what we just went over right here. So anybody's invited. Everybody's invited. Come out and join with us, okay? 1:00 in Okmulgee.
And another thing I want to leave you guys with, it may not dawn on you, the audience, it may not dawn on you guys who are watching how prominent of a figure that Ron is within this movement. But if you just Google Ron Graham Freedman, this man been in New York Times articles, on the news several times. Even if you look up Ron Graham Freedman on YouTube, there's been lectures he's given, dissertations. He's been really at the forefront of this genealogical research long before I ever stepped foot on the scene. So, again, I'm very grateful for you blessing my platform, and I'm sure the audience would love to see you back soon someday.
Absolutely. Again, thanks a lot, Michael.
All right. Take it easy, guys. We'll see you later.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British men. Quite frankly, you was kings Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them. And this shit get way deeper than your pigment.